That worked out pretty well. Live long and Nanu. Hey, this is Pops that I just came up with an idea before going to bed tonight. November 1st, Saturday, year of our Lord, 2025, the year 2025. And an idea came across my head. I just remember early in the days, because I'm the type of guy that seems to be like a firebrand or whatever you want to call him. Rub people the wrong way no matter what I do. Good, bad, indifferent. So this one guy got going. He said, well, I'll do the engine overhauls. You guys don't know nothing about engine overhauls compared to the crap you've pulled. Loose nuts and bolts, wrong parts, no lie, put a fan on backwards and was told that he put it on backwards. Tractor was overheating. Guess who got called to go out and fix it with the angry customer? Not the jackass that the bosses graduated with. So after a while, I just, fine, I think he needs to do all the engine work. So I got plenty of transmission work. I don't care. Give me the clutches, transmissions, hydraulics. I love that end of it. That's fine. And the funny part was, when you talk about God blessing you for your work and your faithfulness, that was one of the things I had there that worked out, for quite a few years. And working on transmissions that nobody else wanted to touch, I came from a shop that dropped Alice Chalmers in New Holland for John Deere Lawn and Garden. Whoa. Well, we're retired. Yeah, you're retired. You're changing into lawn and garden. It's easier for you, but you don't have a saleable business. They didn't. Nobody else wanted to do it or have anything to do with it. And one owner pushed it off on her brother. And he took it because he knew he could do something with it, build it, move it. And ended up closing it down a while later. And it had been a business, for half a century. So there was no vision there. But I learned transmissions while I was there, and Alice Chalmers, and brakes, and a little bit on hydraulics. Well, so while I'm working on the transmissions, I got a reputation for putting transmissions in a 180, 185, 190, 190 XT, 200, able to put them together so they don't jump out of gear. Well, I used what I was taught. In fact, the guy I replaced in the previous employ came in and told me some of the techniques and adjustments that he made for the system after talking with the Alice Chalmers guys, and he says, the bosses will never tell you this. Now, one of them was the boss was arrogant. If you made a mistake, he could jump on you. His ego was like this wide. He wouldn't tell anybody anything because he knew it. He'd do it to the detriment of the business. That's not my conjecture. That's what I was told by one or two of the employees that have been there the longest. So he said, well, you can learn a lot from the idiot, but he will stab you in the back. Oh, yeah, quite a few times. He got a machine all the way back together, and he starts down the list getting all antsy. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do this? And I turned and looked at him and said, no, wait a minute. He says, no, I need to know what was done. And I said, yeah, you should have asked in process. This is a stupid time. And he asked all the questions internal of the transmission. And I'm putting the wheels on the back. Little late now, Dave. So why am I talking here? Well, mainly here I wanted to throw out an idea because some of you might get stuck in the process like I did. Some brown noser comes in, takes over part of the shop, and if you're doing a legitimate work and you have work to do and you can do it well, then ignore them. Let them have their little babies. Let them be little pansies and have their easy work. One guy said, of course he wants to do engines. I said, why? He screws them up. He says, well, yeah, but if you do a quick engine job, hey, the thing looks great. It always runs better when you're done. He says, you do a transmission or something else, does it work better? And I said, hydraulics does. Tranny doesn't jump out of gear and they're able to plow. He says, yeah, you know that. But he likes big power, big things, big. And the guy liked to run his mouth. So, okay, we let him run his mouth. And I kept getting known. More and more transmission work kept coming in. Not just for Alice Chalmers either. Started coming in for Oliver. And I got the work. Why? Because they couldn't trust the idiot. They'd let him do his big jobs and he was their buddy, but they couldn't trust him with internal work. Engine blows up, they blow up engines too. So they didn't care. They thought that was cheap and easy, and it thrilled their buddy, and he was fast. Yeah. He was fast. I tore one engine down. It was a 2800 series Alice 6-cylinder, and I could see the scuff marks on the side of the pistons and the sleeves of the brand new overhaul where 4 out of 6 rods were bent. actually cocked the piston and wore the top, and it wasn't hard to see. And the engine, it kept seizing up. I said, well, yeah, it's bad here. We got to fix this, but that's not why it's seizing. What do you mean? You found four bent right? That's not why it's seizing. It's not transferring metal, but it's wearing funny. That's two different things. What do you think it is? I said, I got to pull the engine out and check the transmission. What are you talking about? I said, it could be the PTO or the input shaft of the transmission. It could be the torque tube or the power director. Could be any one of those things. I have to tear it apart to look, because I'm pretty sure that's where the problem is. What do you mean by that? Well, you tore the engine all down, because you guys kept telling me the engine locked up. So I confirmed the engine didn't lock up, but it wasn't repaired right either. Well, no, I got to pay for all of that. It's not my fault. I'm not the idiot to put it together and didn't run it on the dyno. Somebody else ended up with a job, and it was a bearing in the PTO. They've been wiped out. And every so often it would just bind up and lock up. The only time I had trouble was when the PTO was being used, almost exclusively, but not quite. So why do I keep going through that? Well, because that's easy stuff. You see, the engine, you have to do some diagnostics sometimes. Why is it skipping? Why is it doing that? It could have several different things. But in the transmission, hey, it's jumping out of gear. Okay. Bad shift torque, bad detents, bad shift collars, and gear shift teeth, splines, or bearings in the transmission. Bushings or bearings, any one of the above. You know what it is before you even get in there. You have all that on your list before anything ever happens. And when you're tearing the transmission down, you start to tear it apart. That's when you find out the simple stuff. Well, the shifter's working the way it's supposed to. The shift fork is in good condition, or at least fair. You look down inside, yeah, the gear teeth don't look too good. And then you take a pry bar and start moving things back and forth. And, yep, it's too dang loose. Got to tighten it up. There you go. All done. You've diagnosed it without even wasting your time on it. Some of them said it's jumping out of gear and it's been doing it for a while. And I said, well, let's just overhaul your tranny. He said, why? Because what's wrong with it, I have to tear it all the way apart anyway. Really? Said, yeah. I can fix it in the shift cover like they tried to get me to do 5-6 times. It didn't work. Move the shift detent so it'd be tighter. But it made the situation worse because the collar was tight and the shaft bounced. Blew it right out of gear then. Nobody could hang on to it. Duh. Now we had to buy shift rails, shift forks, etc. So, you get that stuff and you got the knowledge of it and you just move on. Hydraulics? No, you do have to diagnose some. But on tractors, they were pretty simple. Walk out there, find out that this one little bell crank that ran one little particular valve off and seized up. Sometimes the valve itself seized up. You pull the lever and you hear a click, but there's no action. Well, yeah, the relief valve popped because it has an imbalance leak problem internally. Replace the relief, you're all done. So even in hydraulics, relatively simple. Hey, everything's leaking down. So you put it up in the air, cap off the cylinders, and if the still leaks down, you reseal the cylinder. If it doesn't, then your cylinders are tight. That is carrying weight, some weight. You don't want too much on there, believe it or not. Because if you get enough on there and under the right conditions, the seals expand because they have pressure to push them out there and they'll hold for a while. You get just a moderate to light amount of pressure on the things, and okay, got to reseal them. But you have to get them up in the air with some weight on them, hold them there, pull the hoses off, and plug and cap things, and then let the weight down. If they don't go down, then you know what's in the valve. Is the valve worn? Maybe. Most likely it is. Or is the valve out of position? So it's all relatively simple. And you can be quite the hero that way because it's not just the engine. Everything from the clutch back is yours. Well, yeah, if he overhauls the engine, but most engine overhauls are in frame, not out. So clutch, transmission, PTO, all the way back. It's all yours. Final drives. He gets the front end of the tractor. That way his weenie bosses know what he screwed up. So it's not something that you always fight about. There are times you do, and argue for that. Why are you having him do that? He screwed up the last 3 engine jobs he did. Well, yeah, but we can monitor him there. What's he even doing here? You threatened to fire me for less. Shut up. We're not talking about you. No, I'm talking about both of us and your consistent inconsistency. You're expected to know more. I do. He said that Broom over there does as well. Yeah, that's their best buddy. You get to a point where you don't care. You tell them straight. And one of them came out, we don't like a single thing you said. And I said, tell me I'm wrong. He says, I can't. That's what makes me really mad. And off he went. But the other one, oh, he was a weasel. Backbiting weasel. Rewrite work orders, tell customer lies, everything else. And then his partner had to go out and answer for that and came back. What did you do? Nothing. You got the write-up. It's not what the write-up says. And I said, well, then your little weasel brother-in-law did that. Little weasel brother-in-law disappeared a few times. So, stay in your little department and what you know. Something happened in another shop after that, because that shop just became untenable. After I left that shop and went to another one, it was a short time later that same engine weasel decided he could weld a fuel tank with diesel fuel in it. There was fumes all through the shop with an open flame on the torch. He was supposedly soldering it together, and he blew himself, the tank, and a good portion of the shop right up, and he was not able to get back to work for over 2 years. So like I say, let them do their thing. Don't do too much arguing, but point out the facts here and there, and then get about your business. Because you can come out on the right end on that. If you're a Christian especially. What's that got to do with it? Actually, everything. If you're a decent, straight, honest person, not necessarily nice, especially in this mechanical and technical profession, construction, agriculture, and such, you need to be honest and straightforward. That's your job as a mechanic and technician in the shop. Sales, they can't do that. Not because they can't do that, because they can't do that. What does that mean? It's not doublespeak. They can't do it personally. It's impossible. I've never met a salesman that would flat out be honest with a customer. Never. Not once, Christian or not. They couldn't do it. I know a rental rat that claimed Christian up and down, in prayer groups and all this other stuff. And we got down to it, he'd lie through his teeth just to get a rental out the door. Or he'd screw up and wouldn't say something that might help because it might appear that he's pandering or doing something else. And another guy walked in and just started, look, we don't have what you want, but I can get something that'll do the job. So what do you mean? Remember, I used to be your operator working for you? Yeah. Well, so-and-so will do thus and such. I said, and it's a lot easier for you to work with. It won't take up so much space, burn less fuel. Okay, you sold me. Send it. And in some cases, they didn't even ask what size the bulldozer was, and it was half of what they were asking for. And then they called back and said, boy, that was a lot of trips, but you're right. It did everything we needed. Of course it did. He knew what he was doing. He didn't lie to him, but it sure looked like he was. You're BSing me just to get it. He says, I'm not BSing you, but yeah, I am pushing it around to get the rental from you. Straight up. More honest than the Christian, and it went further. Need I say more? Ego and narcissism gets in the way of many things. So you're in the shop, yeah, once in a while you're going to get burned, and yeah, you're going to point something out and be some harsh. Don't back off, but don't get wild. Don't get yelling and screaming unless it's absolutely necessary. I did that one time, and it cleared a lot of stuff up in the shop, and the one guy came out, you're going to get fired for insubordination. No, I'm not. And he says, what do you mean? They're not going to fire me for insubordination. They'll fire me for putting one of the partners in the hospital. He started laughing. You wouldn't. And I turned and looked at him right in the eye, and he says, you might. I said, the little weasel sticks his nose out here. One more time. I am liable. Because he came out and made a bunch of false accusations. I tore him up. His partner said, well, what's going on here? And I told him what's happening and pointed the hammer at his partner while he was coming out of the shop. And I yelled right across, get your face out of here or you won't have one. He went screaming into the front while I was talking to his partner. He laughed and says, I've been trying to get him to do that for years, but this isn't right. And I said, no, you're right, it isn't right. He's making a pile of demands he knows nothing about, that there's no way to do it properly without the tools that he doesn't want to buy. Well, it's a lot of money. I said, what? It's less than $1,000. They said it was on special for $650 just a while ago. That ought to be pocket change for you guys. and your classic cars in your garage. Mm-hmm. Said you'll spend more than that on a camping trip, or a hunting trip. I said, you ain't getting the tools for me to do the job right. And I said, we're a dealer. Sure, I might be able to cob it together. We're a dealer. They got the tool after the tractor was about on the truck and headed out. But I had the right at the time as a head shop foreman, basically. I was able to say those things. So it's not something you can just blast. You have to be in a position for it. Went to another job, and the problem we had there was I was honest. I didn't realize how much the boss lied, the company owner. He'd tell somebody what was wrong with their tractor without ever looking at them, go through the whole thing and give them an estimate sitting there in the office and never look at the tractor. You tell me what's going on, I'll be able to give you a quote. And he did that consistently. There were two of us there that were serious long-term mechanics that knew our craft, and had the skills. In fact, we used to work off of each other quite often with it. And it turns out that he knew what he had done in the past so well that he was proficient at things that I wasn't, and I was just learning. But when it came to technical basics, learning and studying and diagnosing, I was king. And that's not even given credit. And he was willing to learn. So we went back and forth a lot. He's a good guy. His name was Terry. And the two of us were always getting the boss in trouble for lying to his customers without ever knowing it. Customer would walk in, hey, you fixing this and such? No, I found X over here. I got parts coming. He gave us a big cock and bull story, and they go in the office and humiliate him. I told a couple of them, no, don't bother. It's not worth it. He said, yes, it is, because it was going to cost me a lot more. I got ripped, reamed, and fired. And you say, well, that doesn't sound... No, I went and started working on a pulling tractor that I was on the team of already, and 12 customers came in the first week. Self-employed. Didn't have to put up with either of the two lying sacks of crap. So things work out quite well, especially for the Christian. The Lord will work in your favor. It's a tough life to live because you're always against the 8 ball. People think they can abuse you because you have to be nice. No, we don't. We have to be honest, good, and forthright. But you should be the same as a mechanic in the shop. Don't lie to your bosses. And there's some bosses that want you to lie to them. Always tell them what they want to hear. And the little weasels that talk like that, man, they'll get the jobs and go right on up the ladder. You know what the problem with that is? In a lot of businesses, the little weasel takes over the boss's job. And the boss is out the door. Unless he owns the place. I've seen that happen more times than not. And in other cases, the little weasel lies too many times, makes the boss feel good, and find out from the customer that's not the story. Up front in sales and parts, things are different, and it makes a disaster, and everybody turns out, wasn't me. No, wasn't me. Nobody knows nothing. And then the boss and the tech will lie for each other. Parts, sales, and the customer are all left hanging the bag. Or holding the bag, I should say. A bag of crap. BS. So, don't do it. Because remember that thing I talked about, 12 customers coming in the first week? Was it the week or month? It was less than a month. So let's say 1 to 3 weeks. But it was pretty fast. And they didn't know where I was. They found out. The other guy who fired me kept telling them, oh, he's probably working on what so-and-so's pulling tractor. And he's up there getting paid for that instead. He's been double tipping the whole... Really? He was working on that pulling tractor. That's been doing pretty well. Maybe we want him to fix our stuff too. But I heard it from first-hand people who heard the stories to the customers, and one of them broke in and laughed in his face. He says, hey, you know that tractor you misdiagnosed? Here's the rest of the work order that Seth fixed it for you. They were still working on that the first week I was out. Oh, so-and-so misdiagnosed it, and everything that was on here that Seth started is correct. You got to do that job over again while the customer is there in the room. There are some employees that will not let such travesties continue. Christian style, he lost his job. Another Christian, many years before that, lost his supposed Christian. These are fakes. They pretended to play the game. I go to church too, but you're too dogmatic. And I said, really? I read that Bible. That's not dogmatic. Well, you're too serious about it. Too serious about what? Being honest, forthright? Yeah, you have to do what you need to do to get the job done. Oh, no. Told them both you're going to get burned. Told them both you're going to get burned for persecuting a Christian in the first place. So I don't know when it'll happen. Well, the first one lost his job big time. I mean, burned so bad he had to go back to being self-unemployed by the time he was in his late 30s. Gone, done. They butchered him out. Nobody would hire him. And the other one, he lost his company. Somebody swooped in, and in 2 or 3 years, they bought him out and purchased him out and worked him out in contracts, and he didn't even know it happened. He's gone. Lost his own business. Don't say it doesn't happen. So if you're a Christian, hang in there. There will be justice. It might not be till later, but there will be justice. That's why the Lord says, vengeance is mine. Don't take it yourself. He has a better plan. I went through a bad divorce. It was a mess. She took everything, the kids, the money, tried to take the house over, the whole 9 yards. And then things started to unravel when I kept hanging the phone up and refused to work. Threats and everything from a probation officer. And she lost it all. When I found out what she was doing, her family disowned her, threw her out. Daddy was a bigwig in the county, gone. Couldn't hang around the area. So you're a Christian, you're getting abused. Yeah, you might even go down to nothing. Just each step that you go down, though, is something that's against the other person. It will be accrued against them until the time comes that the Lord works his vengeance. Be patient. No, I'm not telling you it's easy. And no, I'm not telling you that you're just going to be smiling away. No, there are days you'll cry your eyes out. That's unfair. That's unjust. Why am I going through this? And then stop, but don't just say why. You stop in prayer and you look up there and you say, Lord, can you give me an answer here? I would like to know why, please, Father. I think it's Hebrews 12. Where the Father chastens and scourges every son, every person, every Christian that he loves in the family, because he's our Father. He chastens for correction, for discipline, for training, basically, and then scourges every son that needs to get that whip out, straighten you out with actual punishment. But we always forget the third session of that Paul the Apostle talks about quite often, and so did Peter. They were in chains, they were in suffering because they made decisions to follow where the Lord wanted to be, to take his word someplace that they wouldn't have gone otherwise. And in Paul's case, you'll find a place where he just said, the Spirit prevented us from going. So there's important things to look at when you're a Christian in all of this world, let alone as a mechanic in the shop, and you're trying to build a good clientele of your own there, that you're trying to do the job right. When I say clientele, I also mean your bosses and such that are in the business, because sometimes your immediate boss will be furious at you, but the people above you will be quite happy. So do your job, stay forthright, stay with it.